everybody. I hope that you are all doing well. I'm Jules of Thought, and today is March 24th, 2023. It's Friday. It is my day of rest. So there you have it. All right, there's so much to talk about for people that are in the true crime community. There's so much to talk about. There's so much that we're following. I think Gwyneth Paltrow's case is supposed to end up today, and um, there's jury selection for the Gannon Stout trial. Um, Lori Vallow's coming up on the April 3rd. Her case starts on April the 3rd, or her trial starts on April 3rd. So things are crazy. Krayzee, crazy. All right. Now, as if we did not have enough to complain about or to talk about, or as one of my fans said earlier this week, gossip about, enter stage left a new, very pious and holy man, James Toliver Craig. That's him on the left, peeking through the A in allegedly innocent. Now, I'm telling you, he gets put into the Mormon Murders Journal to the episode or edition 2023. Yes, we have another outrageous and curious murder of a man who is raised up LDS. Okay? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a foolish woman. I recognize there's Catholics that commit murder. There's Methodists that commit murder. It happens with everyone. Okay? But it seems suspiciously like a lot of these cases where the man is killing the wife after long marriages, lots of children, what is their religion? Yes. Well, there are also like Southern Baptists. What about Josh Duggar or Duggar? What about Josh Duggar? Well, now Barry Morphew has had all of the charges dropped against him. According to the long arm of the law, he is innocent today as we speak. But for those of you that don't know, he was a highly religious man. It's crazy to think about, but he's a highly religious man. And it was like Southern Baptist, and the man is king. And Suzanne even talked about when she was texting with one of her friends, how frustrated she was that they would get into an argument, or she would try to talk to him about the things that were not working in the relationship, and he would begin to quote scripture at her, and how difficult that was, how frustrating it was, and that she could not hold her own by answering back because his depth of, in terms of being a biblical scholar, I suppose, was too much. So please don't get me wrong. Allie, exactly. So Allie Cattail says it perfectly. Extreme patriarchal religions is where you're getting these mindsets that the wife is just functional. That as long as the marriage is working well with that particular wife, then no harm, no foul, everything's great. But if suddenly things stop working well with the wife, or this pious holy man like James Craig runs across a little hottie that he would like to put into his bed, then the wife, is then expendable. She's replaceable. She's a temporary. She's just there. She's just there to fulfill the role of, childbirth, right? So I'm kind of reducing it, to its most simple molar offense. But but you got to wonder if these extreme beliefs are not creating men that fail to see the humanity of the women they're married to. And then how does that translate to their children, their daughters? Number one, how do they see their daughters themselves? What kind of relationships do they have with their daughters? And then are they molding the daughters to accept a husband who himself will be abusive to them? I think we were all quite surprised to see how steadfast the Morphew girls stood beside their dad. Even the young lady who said, told mom maybe she needed to get a restraining order before she tried to leave dad, even she stood by his side unwavering. And my fear for her is, what kind of man will she accept as her mate? And will he treat her with respect and gentle love rather than this kind of disgusting type of ownership mentality? So once again, you got this guy, James Toliver Craig, and he is in fact a Mormon. He is 45 years old. He is got 6 children. Oops. I don't know where that noise came from. He has 6 children, all from the mother, Angela Craig. Now, the history of this couple is a little bit worrisome anyway. And I wondered to myself, why didn't Angela bolt? I'm talking about take off and run for the door, head for the hills kind of thing. And here's what I mean. Several years ago, it seems that Dr. Craig was depressed and he was going to commit suicide. He was going to kill himself. And so he literally drugged Angela so that she would be knocked out cold, so she would not be awake as he committed suicide. That's the story that he told. Now I ask you, fine women of the channel, allegedly innocent, how would you feel about your husband drugging you into submission so that you wouldn't have to endure the pain of his suicide attempt? Would you stick around for Act 2? Or would you say, you're crazy, I'm taking my children, and I am out of here? So just let's do a quick little vote among all of us jewels and gemstones. When you learn that your husband gave you drugs to make you go to sleep, would you A, understand that he was being so loving and kind and caring about your thoughts and stay? That would be 1. Or 2, would you kick him in the shin and collect your children and run away laughing? Let me see what your answers are. 1, are you going to say, oh, thank you, fine husband, for sparing me? Or 2, kick him in the shin and run away? Lots of running away. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry, Critters, about your daughter. I hope she's feeling okay. Prayers for Critter's daughter who's had surgery. Yes, we would run away. There's something inherently horribly wrong with a human being who says to themselves, I shall give drugs to my spouse to spare them from having to watch this thing that I'm going to do. But then ultimately you don't do it. So it's scary. This is a very frightening guy. Another question. Do you remember Adventures with Purpose, right? What did he say when his cousin came out and said, I was raped as a small child by this adult? He was a young adult at the time. And everyone was outraged, weren't we? But what did he say? Do y'all remember what he had in his emails? He said, it happens all the time. It's common in the Mormon religion for the men to exploit and objectify the girls, not just grown women, but even the children in the family. That the sexual engagement with family members is common in this culture. He was so comfortable saying that it didn't even occur to him by saying that he was being horrifically offensive, much less to actually do it. Now, we also noticed that case has just kind of magically disappeared, didn't it? So, I think that when we look at the Mormon religion in particular, so I've been doing a lot of reading and learning about this whole second anointing, and of course that runs into all of the conspiracy and the discussions related to Joseph Smith and how dramatically he has shaped this religion. And he was I don't want to be offensive to those of the LDS religion. That I'm Methodist. I don't want people making blanket statements about Methodist or Baptist or anything else. I'm open to that. But let me just say this. The religion as they practice it today is based on this man, Joseph, who they hold as prophet, right? They have built him up into this sort of magical, metaphysical creature. And the reality is, when you go, did you know, for example, instead of me stumbling over my words, because I'm trying not to, offend people. I don't want to offend anybody. I want to have a conversation. Okay. Did you know that Joseph Smith was he had he was arrested. He was a fraud. Did y'all know that? He was a fraud. His dad, he would put a rock in his hat. This is so bizarre. He'd put a rock into a hat, and then he'd lean over into the hat, and he'd look down into the hat. He'd put his face all the way into the hat so that there was no light that would get into the hat, correct? And then he would, in that very darkened state, he would look down at the rock, and the rock would tell him things. Now, if you're laughing, put a 1. If you think this sounds perfectly reasonable, put a 2. I'm just curious. I haven't seen that, Allie. Yeah, every religion has its and I would even go one. I'm laughing about the rock thing. It's just silly. Hey, Martin, welcome. It's just silly. It really is. Yeah, and I agree with hybrid 100%. Yes, every religion has its problems, but I would go even further than to say every religion has its problem. I think that anytime you put one person in charge of so much power, that's where your problems come from. You remember Enron? I mean, there's all kinds of historically, you look back across any kind of government, nations, when individuals begin to amass power, things go off the rails. That's actually one of the reasons why many people are afraid of Donald Trump. They get very nervous because his supporters are so devoted. I guess it's the right word. They're so devoted, and they look to him like he's the answer and the savior for everything, and there's nobody else that can do what he can do, and all that. And so some people, it makes them very nervous because they kind of see shades of Hitler, and Hitler was highly adored in the beginning before he got really crazy and said, wow, I got a ton of power, I'm just going to march across Europe. So it's not just religion that the problem becomes unchecked power, right? That's the real trouble. That's where the real trouble comes, is unchecked power. Trey Parker and Matt Stone wrote it. Sold out touring Broadway musical. Guys who wrote South Park from Colorado. My stepdad taught them. That is a very cool story, Allie. Very cool story. And it's just called Book of Mormon. Yeah, and then Hybrid Pisces says that you take that consolidation of power and put it into the hands of one person, and then you teach people that it's shameful to question the power, right? We had he's a big daddy. Okay. We kind of have the same thing going on with this whole vaccination argument. People, it was pushed on us very quickly, and people were terrified. We were all locked down in our homes, and everything. And it really came out too early. They didn't take time to see. I kept thinking of thalidomide. We were told, our mothers were told thalidomide was fine. It was not a problem. And then, it took about 9 months for it to come out. Well, actually, no, it's not fine. And so I worry about with the vaccination, but now we've got lots of research that's come out, and it's saying, wait a minute, we need to step back here and take a look at this, because there's some very real numbers that look really worrisome. But they embarked on this campaign to shame and ridicule any medical professional or scientist that tried to have a discussion about the vaccination. So the use of shame and ridicule to consolidate power and not to be revealed as a fraud, it's a real thing, and it hurts people when it happens. And religion is one of those places that people can declare themselves a prophet, and if they memorize and they learn all the right words and quote all the right scripture, then people can become very, very devoted to that religious leader without really paying a lot of attention to the reality of the emperor's new clothes, right? The little kid finally stands up and says, but wait a minute, he's not wearing any clothes. What do you mean he's wearing invisible clothes? He's not wearing anything. So sometimes we have to see through the eyes of a child, and with the courage of a child who is not limited by their fear of humiliation and ridicule, to actually meet the truth and find it. And so please don't think I'm picking on the Mormons. I am not. I'm talking about the reality of a lot of men, whether they're Mormon, whether they're Southern Baptist like Barry Morphew, whether they're Josh Duggar, another Southern Baptist. I think that came out of, he's in a prison in Segoville, Texas. It can create some very misogynistic men who feel more power than perhaps they're entitled to. And please let me say again, Barry Morphew is not guilty. He's not standing trial. There are no charges against him. They were all dropped. He's as free as you are. So I'm just talking about, when he was charged, and he almost did go to trial before the prosecutor ruined the case. All right, back on point. So James Toliver Craig is 45-year-old. He is from Aurora, Colorado. Now, I had this interesting conversation with my daughter, and I said, honey, what the hell's going on with all the daddies in Colorado? Why are there so many men in Colorado that hurt their families, kill their wives or their children or whatever? And I said, I kind of laughingly said, well, there's a lot of people online that make jokes about the elevation, that they don't have enough oxygen. I have my favorite cap that I have is a Breckenridge cap, and it's got oxygen, and it's very cute, and that's what I wear when I'm in Colorado doing the ski stuff. And so she looked at me and she said, Mom, she said, I can't believe that you're a psychologist and you would say that and ask me that question. And I said, well, I just want your opinion. Why are you saying that? She looked at me and kind of like with incredulity, and she said, Mom, she said, it's called seasonal affective disorder. And I went, oh, snap. Right? So is there something to that? Is it possible that some of what goes on in Colorado with all this domestic stuff, could it be being fueled by people going through limited sunlight? They're not getting enough sun on their actual skin, and maybe they are having these bouts of severe depression, which then sets them up for substance abuse. It sets them up for illicit affairs and infidelity. And then the rest is history. I'll tell you something else about Colorado. It is expensive. It is very expensive. And that is something else that we've learned about Craig that was very similar to Chris Watts, is that James Craig, too, appeared to have money problems. So we're falling right into that FBI profiling thing of men that kill their families, and nearly all of them are in dire financial straits. It's as if they have the fantasy of doing a hard reset. My life is not working as it is, and I don't even want to make just a little, little change here or a little change there. I just need to wipe clean slate, start completely over. And in fact, just like Chris Watts, James Toliver Craig had him a woman. And interestingly enough, that woman is from Texas, not far from where I live, actually. So the way that Craig was caught was that his dental practice in Aurora, the office manager intercepted a package. Now, it's being presented like, it was accidental. Okay, I can accept that. Maybe it was. Maybe it's an act of God. Maybe God intervened and said, we're not doing this. If you do this, the police are going to catch you and you're going to go to prison. And that's exactly what happened. The office manager intercepted a package, opened it by accident, not realizing that it, should have been opened directly by Dr. Craig. And it was, in fact, poison. Now, she tells an interesting tale that Craig and his wife, Angela, went to go work out on the morning of March the 6th this year. So just, a couple of weeks ago. They went to go work out, and Craig made a big deal about Angela drinking a protein shake. She was said to have been feeling a bit sluggish. And of course, James and all of his elite information and knowledge as Dr. James, you're a dentist. I'm sorry, but you're not a heart surgeon. So James says, oh dear, I am the doctor in the family. You shall need a protein shake, a pre-workout shake, because you need extra protein, because that's why you feel sluggish. And so he basically forces the shake onto Angela, who begrudgingly takes it. And then after the workout, Angela is now faint. She's dizzy. She's sick. She doesn't feel good. And apparently this was so extreme because James actually picked her up and took her to the hospital. So was he certain about how much he had put in her drink? I don't know. It's very interesting. So, on the day that Angela was declared brain dead and ultimately passed away, he was arrested on murder charges, and it was basically the poisoning death of his wife. The Aurora Police Department Major Crimes Homicide Unit arrested Craig, and he was booked into jail about 2 a.m. So I'm guessing they, made a run on his house while he was asleep. The name of his practice, he worked for Summerbrook Dental in Aurora, and of course, everything is, down. He had gotten his degree. He's an associate professor at the University of Missouri Dental School, where he had taught clinical dentistry, biochemistry, and histology. At one time, he had been a dentist for more than 16 years. So it would appear that based on their whole investigation and the arrest affidavit, that he had been planning to end the life of his wife. He was actively searching for ways to kill someone without it being detectable. So he had apparently, given her multiple substances trying to kill her that would result in symptoms that would hospitalize her but not be detectable in a autopsy. And what was the reason for his hard set? Anybody want to guess? Of course. He has a woman. That's right. And her name she's the ultimate Karen. Now, I'm going to temper my snarkiness here because there's absolutely, according to the police, there's absolutely there's no proof, no evidence, no indication that Karen knew about his sinister plan. What is very interesting, though, when you actually get into learning about the affair partner's life, then there's some curious things that are there. It doesn't make her guilty of being an accomplice or even knowing. I mean, I really don't think this is like a Nicole Kessinger scenario. Why think about this? This woman lives in Texas. She is an orthodontist. She is a well-educated person, owns her own practice. She's in Texas, just outside of Austin, and he's all the way up in Colorado, and they're getting online. They're sending dirty text messages back and forth and dirty pictures and whatnot. And why would he tell her that he was planning on killing his wife? What woman in their right mind would want to be with a man who was going to kill his wife to be with her? Right? You would have to be insane if a man said to you, "Oh, I love you so much. I can't live without you, but I have this wife that's going to cause a problem. And so we better kill her so that you and I can be together." And then she says, "Okay, honey, that sounds fine." No. What went on with Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell was a little bit different. They were in touch with one another. They were seeing one another. There was very real mental illness. Not insanity, but I think probably personality disorders and whatnot. So it's different. This woman, Karen, has her own business. She's a well-educated professional. She actually had filed for divorce from her husband in November of 2022. So She was not doing what he was doing, like having affairs behind his wife's back. She outright said, I want a divorce. Right? Now, Karen's name is mentioned in the arrest affidavit. She did take a Southwest flight to Colorado previously when he had put his wife in the hospital with another poison. So she was trying to get a divorce from her husband. She probably really believed that he was trying to get a divorce from his wife. And she's probably taken by surprise at all of this herself. I will say he was arrested that night, and on that next day, Thursday, she had shut everything down. She had anything related to internet, all of her social media, everything's completely gone. You don't know if maybe he messaged the cops are here, I'm getting arrested. We don't really know that, unless maybe the cops were already talking to her before the arrest. There's really no way of knowing. But she filed for divorce in November of 2022 in a really dangerous arrangement, in my opinion. I think it's very dangerous when people are getting divorced and they're living together. It's a recipe for a terrible disaster. But her husband was living on a trailer right there by the house, right? So he's kind of one of these who's refusing to abandon the property. And you can thank the attorneys for that. They're telling people who are going through a divorce, don't leave, because then you may lose the rights to the home, yada, yada. So he's living in a camper there, or trailer there on the property. And he goes into her house to take a shower every day. So this is a terrible situation, right? It's a terrible situation. They were fighting openly. There was a lot of gossip happening around Marble Falls. There was a ton of gossip because she was the only orthodontist. It's an hour and a half to get to Austin. And so she was pretty well the dentist for everybody in town. And she and her husband were arguing and fighting. He was burning up the cash. He was blowing go, according to her, according to what she said. He's burning up the cash. He is blowing and going on the money after she filed for divorce. And she worked, the money problems that he created were so extensive that she worked for a whole year with getting no salary, because it was all having to go to pay for these debts that he was accumulating, I guess, before she filed for the divorce in November. So what is the takeaway? What do we learn from this, people? It's probably a bad idea to have an affair. Can y'all agree? Affairs tend to make people crazy. It makes people, it is a number one, it's a betrayal. But number two, it makes the person betrayed very bitter and very angry, and they become quite vengeful. And so in their vengefulness, they can go after, they can start with something simple like, well, I'll have an affair too. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Watch me go. And so that's the first step, right? Down to the ninth circle of hell. Yeah, Dante's Inferno. So then they start like, well, I'll just take all the money, you asshole. And so then they start messing with the money. And then that goes, well, I won't pay the house note. Ha, ha, ha. And then you find out your house is in foreclosure. It becomes, I've seen people go after their wife or their husband's job. Like they'll start sending crazy letters and stuff to the boss at the job. Infidelity makes people insane. So if you're at that point that you're so dissatisfied in your marriage that you're considering an affair, take a little bit of advice. Get the divorce. Divorces do not make people as crazy as infidelity makes people. If you agree with me, put a 1. If you think it's perfectly manageable to have an affair and everybody stay happy, put a 2. Ooh, my daughter turned into a vengeful demon. And it happens, Blonde PT. Yes. Yes. Infidelity. I'm telling you, getting a divorce is easier. It does not make people crazy like infidelity makes people crazy. It makes them crazy. You don't want to deal. Y'all have heard that. What is that saying? There's no hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, right? You don't want that in your life, either man or woman. It makes it turn. Yes, Martin. It turns very reasonable people like Judge Boyce into bunny boilers. Thank you, Martin, for that very expert assessment. I appreciate that. Okay. Yes. The most calm and reasonable, wise-minded person will suddenly turn into a bunny boiler, stalking you through the streets of Manhattan. Yeah, it's terrible. So don't go there. Don't go there. Just get the divorce. Okay, just get the divorce. Things are easier, and then move on. Had to talk her off the ledge many times. We had to talk about how being a serial killer wouldn't work out well for her. Yeah, she's not really accustomed or well suited for prison life, and she looks terrible in stripes. They add at least 10 pounds. Absolutely blonde. Thank God she had a reasonable mother on her team. Very good. Okay. I am making light of it, but it is devastating. There are people that present at the emergency room all the time who are basically, in deep decompensation because it's just so overwhelming and frightening to experience. So do yourselves a favor, people. If you're unhappy in your marriage, you're ready for it to be over, just do it the right way. Be fair. Don't try to hide money. Just be adults about it and then move on into a new life. You'll be happier that way. Affairs will burn your entire life to the ground, and there's nothing sacred, DB. I have seen people. Listen, there's a story that's kind of making its round around the Houston, journalist stuff, the small newspapers, Houston Chronicle and whatnot. The man, he's got visitation with his daughter. The wife, who's filing for divorce, wants out of this whole deal. They get on FaceTime together. I guess the baby's only like 2 years old, and she's going to see the baby, I guess, during the visitation weekend or whatever. Anyway, so they're on Facebook together doing a live so that she can see the baby. And the man who did not want the divorce. So the wife is the one having the affair. The man chokes and kills the 2-year-old baby while the mother is watching this Facebook Live. It is as horrific of a nightmare as anyone could ever imagine, right? It's just cannot even wrap your head around it. So, and I think those people, as far as I can tell, they were no religion at all. So please don't get me wrong. I'm not picking on the Mormons. Not. I just find it very interesting how the same story keeps playing over and over and over again for these very religious people who won't drink a Coca-Cola, but they'll replace their mate, right? It's anyway. I'm gonna move forward because Martin, help! Say something, Martin. Okay. All right. So, so I don't think that she knew about this or had anything to do with this. I've been very vocal with the Chris Watts case. I think that Nicole Kessinger, well, I think she is one lucky girl. Let me just put it that way. I think there's some splaining to do about why her phone is pinging off of a certain cell phone tower at 6 a.m. That there's some curiosities there. There's also some other things that Nicole Kessinger needs to explain, and that is exactly when did you know that Shanann Ruchek was even a person, and why were you stalking her before you ever went to work at the same place that Chris Watts did? Why is that? So I could do this all day long with Nicole Kessinger. I don't think that is what happened with this particular Dr. Karen. We're just going to call her Dr. Karen. Dr. Karen is an impressive professional. Okay. She is a graduate of the finest medical school, perhaps in the whole United States, but for certain in Texas. And that would be University of Texas. She was a graduate of the University of Texas Orthodontic program. Let's see, I want to be careful what I say here. Her children went to a very prestigious private school. She serves multiple counties as the only dentist orthodontic specialist. After completing her residency, Dr. Karen took extra steps to get her board certification. And so she's board certified by the American Board of Orthodontics, which is only 5% of dentists that become, that join the board, get the board certification. And Linda Stanley, Dr. Karen not only achieved what 5% of dentists do, which is to become, board certified by the American Board of Orthodontists, but she also keeps her license active. Yeah, she doesn't let her certification lapse, Linda Stanley. She pays her dues. She completes her continuing education. It's amazing, Linda. All right. Dr. Karen has a couple of adult children. That's all I'm going to say about it. And I'm going to say your heart would break. Now, I'm going to tell you the photographs have been wiped from the internet. This family, I don't know who did it. She's probably got an attorney that keeps her internet cleaned up and whatnot, but they shut things down very quickly. So she is in hiding. She is gone from the family home. The neighbors say they haven't seen hide nor hair since the whole story broke. That last time she was seen was on Wednesday. So she's gone, disappeared. The husband from whom she is divorcing, she filed divorce papers in November of this past year. He is now at the home with the kids. So, I'm not going to talk about the kids. That's not exactly true. But anyway, the ex-husband or soon-to-be ex-husband is now at the home. He's being very polite to people, but he is saying nicely, no comment. I can't comment on this, so, and he could, if he wanted to be vengeful, and I'm sure that he wants to. I'm sure that he's angry that her highfalutin around with a married man that's got 6 kids. I'm sure he's very unhappy, So I think he may have alerted the police to some things, but that wasn't really that came out in some just a Facebook thing. So I'm not going to we'll see. We'll see what ends up with that. Anyway, I again, I'm going to say it again and again. I do not believe that Miss Karen or Dr. Karen and her family, her ex-husband, I don't believe not for a minute that they knew what crazy Jimmy was up to. Crazy Jimmy Craig, old Jimmy. Yeah, he's a wild and crazy dentist. Okay. So messages between Crazy Jimmy and Dr. Karen were intimate and contained sexually explicit conversations and photographs. It appears that while Jimmy was flying this woman, Dr. Karen, into Denver as his wife, and his mother was dying in the hospital. In fact, the day that she died, Dr. Karen was supposed to get on an airplane and go up there and be with him. I know. It's very uncomfortable, people. Dr. Karen is said to have written to him, "Hi, honey. I am so sorry for what has transpired this week in your world. I am sorry I am not part of your world to be of more help to you, and instead I am pulling you away. This is so hard. I want to be and do whatever I can to support and encourage you. I don't want to add to what has become an incredibly difficult time. I can't imagine what it is doing to you to walk your kids through this. I do want to give you any comfort I can, but I do not feel it is right for me to mix in with all those gatherings to mourn Angela." So did she know Angela? Someone answer me this. Does that sound like a woman who had to make a decision whether it would be appropriate for her to go to Angela's wake? Or I think she knows Angela, people. Dr. Karen, you made the biggest mistake in the book, Dr. Karen. My God in heaven. I can't imagine what it is doing to you to walk your kids through this. I do want to give you any comfort I can. I would love to just suckle you close to my bed. Okay, never mind. Wrong. But I do feel it is right for me to mix in with all those gatherings to mourn Angela. I do not want to meet your family as a friend and try to conceal what I feel for you. Dr. Karen. What the hell, Dr. Karen? Dr. Karen, I'm going to tell you something, girl. I think that you are in that fog of lust. That's right. I think, Dr. Karen, that you have been bit by the love bug, and it has made you crazy. Krayzee. No woman in their right mind, Dr. Karen, especially one as smart as you, would find out that your affair partner's wife has died suspiciously of what appears to be poisoning, and you're worried about meeting his family and concealing the lust that you have for dear old daddy. Something is wrong here, and it reeks of Lori Vallow. Reading this, I thought, oh my God, this is the same thing with Lori Vallow and the vacation. She gets rid of Tylee and JJ, and then she goes on a California vacation with Chad and the fam. Isn't that weird? It's so weird. This is so strange. Women of America, women of the world, grab a hold of your hearts. Don't become puppets to these men. Find you a good, stable human being that doesn't have a wife and 6 children hanging on to them. And then maybe you won't have to ask yourself questions like, Is it appropriate for me to go to your ex-wife or your dead wife's funeral and get introduced as your friend and me not be able to show my lust? Then you won't be put into that embarrassing situation, Dr. Karen. So Dr. Karen ends her heart-fueled, love-fueled letter to Crazy Jimmy. I know, Drover, it's a sad, sad tale. Can y'all hear Drover? So Dr. Karen ends her sad, sad, mournful letter to her lover, Crazy Jimmy, by saying, I am praying for you, Crazy Jimmy. I am praying for you and seeking God's wisdom at this time. Really? You waited too late for that, Dr. Karen. You waited way too late to seek the wisdom from the God. She signed off with words, I love you, James. I do. I love you. Meanwhile, Dr. Karen has denied to comment about her relationship with Crazy Jimmy as of now to media outlets. I'm going to tell you, I worry sometimes about intelligent, well-educated, grown-ass women that get involved with crazy men. It's very, very sad tale. All right, so I'm going to read some messages now. Let's see. Blonde PT says, if you can find one that can cook as good as Piddling Bill. That's funny that you said that. He just walked in the door. Exactly. What are these women thinking? And if he cheats, they'll cheat on each other. Well, sure. Absolutely. Shoshona. Oh, Shoho. Oh, yeah. She's a fancy little prancer. Uncontrolled lust is a drug. It is. It absolutely. No doubt about it. I was just going to say, look out. Xerox. I would never send my significant other explicit text over the internet. They live forever. Yes, they do. And the sad part is that one day Dr. Karen is going to look back at that particular love letter and go, oh my God, what was I thinking? Oh my God, what in the hell was I thinking? That's coming, right? You know that, Dr. Karen. You know that it won't be long that the fog of lust will clear. And where all of that lust used to be, clouding your judgment, limiting your fluid reasoning, will come reasonable, logical, linear thought. And you'll say, holy hell, what did I do? That's true. All right. Maybe they're just friends. Yes, Martin, I suspect they are just friends. I think my number one sentence that makes me think that Dr. Karen and Crazy Jimmy, I think they're friends when she says, I do not feel it is right for me to mix in with all those gathering to mourn Angela. I do not want to meet your family as a friend and try to conceal what I feel for you. That's right. She's trying to tell Crazy Jimmy that she's so sorry about the death of Angela, but she doesn't know if she can control the urge to jump his bones. So what do you think, Martin? You think that sentence is the one that tells us these two people were not just friends? Never have understood how these professional women are so willing to throw it all away. They are too, Blonde. I don't get it. Maybe it's this. Okay, let's think about this. Let's think about this. Now I'm going to tell you something. I'm making some jokes, I got accused of being a gossiper, a gossiping neighbor, that the only content that I can offer is wild speculation and, I don't remember, theory or something. I don't remember what it said. But today I'm proving something else. I do have a sense of humor. And many people will go, yeah, you have a sense of humor, but probably when you're talking about the heinous death of a mother of 6, it's probably not a really good time to show that humor. Well, it's not a good time to show that humor when you're talking about her death, but it is certainly appropriate when you are trying to highlight how ridiculous of a choice it was for an intelligent, well-educated woman to get into a relationship with a man like James Toliver Craig. You know what I mean? Let's just keep it real about what the butt of the joke is here. It has nothing to do with this woman's death. It's devastating. It is absolutely devastating. But let me give you something else to understand why I think it is perfectly appropriate to ridicule Crazy Jimmy, Dr. James Toliver Craig, and his lover, Dr. Karen. Well, because you've got a total of 8 children that will now carry the shame and the weight of what their parents engaged in. It is, when you think of the reality of what these people did, it is horrific. Don't be feeling sorry for Dr. Karen. Dr. Karen isn't stupid. Remember, she is a University of Texas Houston Orthodontic School graduate. She is brilliant. Make no mistake about it. To even get accepted into that school is incredible, magical, but to finish it, to go on and become a board certified orthodontist, okay, she's a brilliant woman. So don't misunderstand this. Why the man that she chose to mess around with, the man that she chose to fool around with, he's sitting around on the computer at his office watching pornography and doing that thing. He's sitting in his office watching pornography all day long, and then he's going and sticking his hands in people's mouths. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? This is disgusting. And people need to be held to their decisions, their behavior. We need to start making decisions and choices with an idea of what's the goal? What am I working toward here? It's hard to know. It's hard to know what Dr. Karen was thinking as she gets into this relationship with this crazy man. And he's, Martin is calling it midlife crazy. Maybe, but he had a lot going. There was a lot going on with this guy, Martin. This is Casey Anthony territory. To look and try to figure out, how do you kill someone in a way that it doesn't show up in an autopsy. The term premeditated just gets blown out of the water in this one. He actually drugged his wife before, and then gave the hilarious excuse, I was going to commit suicide and I wanted to spare you the pain and horror of having to live, me trying to commit suicide, which he didn't do. So it's a terrible story. It is very similar to the Chadster and the Queen of the Damned. But you can also draw a lot of parallels with a lot of other. You can look at Josh Duggar, the Duggars, Josh Duggar. this pious man of God, right? All over the television for years and years, in this reality TV show. We're just going to keep on having babies. We're going to read Bible scripture, and then the whole world is going to worship us. Right? Nothing could go wrong here, right? So again, it's chilling to think about Barry Morphew and his deeply held religious beliefs, to the point that Suzanne felt she couldn't even have a conversation with him because of him quoting scriptures at him. We've got Travis Alexander, not that Travis killed his family, but that he experienced a heinous death by a woman who appeared to have been engaged into that, what is a ceremony called, where if you do it wrong, you have to spill your blood on the ground? Blood. Does anybody know? I can't remember. Blood sacrifice. Anyway, that appeared to be there. When you look at the teachings as described by Melanie Gibb and Melanie Pulowski, and to some effect the writings of Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, it looks like the second anointing. Before they removed everything from preparing a people, it looked like some of these teachings by the Mormon Church that are secret, but they're obviously blood atonement. Mary Rose, you're my savior today. Thank you. Yes. Blood atonement, right? Yeah. She killed him multiple ways, multiple times, but finally, ultimately, it was to cut the carotid artery, which is part of that ritual sacrifice. I've had to tell a few friends, y'all's heat is coming below your belly, but what? Wait, what? What? Your name is very appropriate. Okay, I shall read. Wait, what? I'm going to read that statement. Now, I want everybody to know it was not I that formulated this statement. Okay? Not me. Wait, what? I've had to tell a few friends, y'all's heat, I think this person's from Texas, y'all's heat is coming below your belly button and you're not using your brain. You got to look into the future. And you're probably number 10, etc. on his list. Yes, they got mad. Thank you. Wait, what? Exactly. You got to live a goal-directed life, people. You need to know what you're working for. When you set goals, it sets a trajectory. And therefore, if you have a trajectory, you know a direction, where you're going. If you encounter someone like Crazy Jimmy here that's trying to lead you astray, Dr. Karen, you can stop and say to yourself, wait a minute, if I go run off to the Cayman Islands for a weekend of wild monkey sex with Crazy Jimmy Craig, was that taking me one step closer to my goal, or is that taking me one step further away from my goal? And Dr. Karen, you would have said, oh my God, it's going to take me further away from my goal. And so, no, Crazy Jimmy, I will not go with you to the Cayman Islands. Not happening. And you'll stay on your charted course, Dr. Karen, and you won't have your photograph, being searched out by every journalistic bug in the world trying to find out who the hell is Dr. Karen. Yeah. All right. Let's see. The more true crime stories. The more true crime stories I hear about, the more similarities I see between all of them, no matter how far apart in years the crimes were committed. Yeah, Shalimar, that's how the FBI is able to do their profiling. They look for parallels and correlations, and then they develop profiles. So money is always a big one. Crazy Jimmy Craig, money problems. And, sadly, Dr. Karen ended up with severe money problems too, but that was because her husband is the financial director of her practice. And after she filed for divorce in November, he got a little bitter, I think, and kind of went crazy with money. So, Martin, have you ever noticed the dates of December are always 3rd, 4th, 5th, 9th, 10th? 3rd, 4th, 5th. I don't understand that. What does that mean, Martin? Yeah. Yes, Shalimar, there was a lot with Lori and Chad that centered on the dates 8 and 9. They like those numbers. I don't know what they mean. There was some occult related to the death of JJ for sure. There was some occult observances, but it was like with Tylee, they missed it by like 1 or 2 days, something like that. I'm trying to remember back several years ago, so I'll have to refresh my memory on it. But yeah, I agree that with Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, the 8 and the 9 were often repeated. And then remember what I said. For the trial, what my thumbnails would look like. So this example of my thumbnails for the Lori Vallow trial. All my videos where I talk about this will have a thumbnail that looks similar to this, but I call it A Date with Destiny because Joseph Ryan died on April the 3rd, 2018. And the start of her trial is April 3rd, exactly 5 years later. And I think it's an interesting parallel because I think she targeted Joseph Ryan. I think he was the first. Within a year or so, Charles is dead. So he died during a period of time where she's ramping up and getting, pretty crazy. And so I just thought that was an interesting parallel. And so the threes are a big one too, but 8s and 9s are really big in the Lori Vallow thing. All right. Depression, lack of sunlight in winter. Yeah, and for many years, people would take antidepressants. Anybody living north of the Arctic Circle was common to take antidepressants during the winter months because you're essentially there's only about 4 hours of indirect sunlight during several months, and it's pretty brutal on your whole body, even the way your various organs work. It's pretty hard. So people live north of the Arctic Circle. It's common for them to take antidepressants. But now they have developed these lamps, alarm clocks, a regular lamp, different things that mimic the sunlight. And so now more and more people are using the lamps and the lights to help mimic the exposure to sun. And that is helping far more than the medication. So, yeah. And my daughter may be onto something with this whole, why do you have all this affairs with murder happening in Colorado specifically? And now we're starting to see Idaho, lots of it happening in Idaho. Maybe she's onto something there with this whole restricted sunlight and having, almost like a cyclothymia or bipolar that is being governed by the sunlight, right? That you're happy for a couple of months and then you're devastated for a couple of months. Then you're happy for a couple of months and you're devastated for a couple of months. And it's true, when people get unhappy, a lot of them think, oh, well, I need to have an affair and then I'll feel better. And to some extent, sure, you're with someone new, it's different, it can mimic that falling in love thing again. But I can't tell you how many people have said to me, I look at my affair partner now after I've gotten away from them. I'm not a part of their lives anymore. I look back at it now and I just shake my head and wonder, what was I thinking? I mean, when I look at the photographs or I look at the memories, I just realized, no, he really was gross, or she was gross, or stupid, or, whatever the negative appraisal is. My brother went into a deep depression while working as an RN in Alaska. Yeah, it's a very difficult lifestyle. I love when law enforcement arrests or district attorneys file charges on significant dates of victims. Yeah, like birthdays and, yep. 5 years to the day, Hybrid Pisces, from the time that Joseph Ryan was killed. I believe he was killed. They said it was a heart attack, but I believe he was killed, to the trial date for the murder of Tylee. It's wonderful. I think it's a great parallel. Oh, yeah. Working inside one of these high-rise office buildings and there's no windows. Ugh, it's horrible. It's horrible. My son's birthday is April 4th. He was born 4/4/2014. Aw, I used 4 as my lucky number. That won the Oculus. No, Hybrid. Oh my God, that's amazing. That's wonderful. Good. I was so glad that you won that for your kids. Yeah, it was good. I need to do another one, but I don't ever make money on my YouTube channel anymore. People used to give a lot of super chats and things like that, but they don't do that anymore. It's not a big deal. It's okay. But before, when there was more money coming in than what I was spending, then I was using that for the gifts and the drawings and stuff, but I can't do that anymore right now. Out of frying pan into the bunny pot. There you go, Martin. Martin is on his A game today. Look at him being all funny and stuff. That's awesome. I believe Mr. Ryan was killed. Getting away with that may have empowered her. I think you're right, Kim. I really do. I think that was the first step, and she thought, wow, maybe I really can do this, and that was it. That you got to admit, Kim, they got very audacious and almost sloppy. I guess sloppy would be a good word. The day that Alex and Lori took JJ and Tylee to Yellowstone, which was really the last day we know that Tylee was alive. But the day that they took those kids to Yellowstone was the exact date that Chad Daybell was increasing his wife's life insurance. The same exact day. Messy, right? Or just arrogant and smug and felt like they could get away with anything. And I got to admit to you, how many chances has Lori Vallow gotten? How many? What they're doing in Idaho, the way Judge Boyce is running this trial is embarrassing. Judge Boyce needs to feel embarrassed of what he's done. It's not good. I grew up in Alaska. It was a wonderful place to grow up. You just have to get out and be active. So I'm not sure where you're from, Nana. Obviously, don't say, because this is, the internet. But I lived a long time in Kenai, right outside of Kenai. Loved it. Like you said, loved it. For example, you know how everybody hates the smell of skunk, right? Everybody goes, "Ooh, gross, it's awful." Well, for some reason, I don't find that odor to be offensive at all, not a bit. And if I smell the smell of a skunk, the first thing I can immediately remember, in Alaska, we would go out to the berry patch and pick berries. And there were always, it was always the smell of skunks when we were out there. So it's probably why I don't associate it with a noxious odor. If I smell it, I have like a good memory. So that's one of my favorite memories of Alaska, is going out into the wilderness and picking the berries. And we love to go to the lake, the rivers, and trout fishing. And so, yeah, it was really wilderness at the time, Nana. Yeah, it wasn't much. The men in the trailer park where we lived, it was all oil field workers, right? There were transient, people coming in and out working, and there were a few people like with the engineers and stuff that stayed there all year round. We had houses in that same area, but the men all the time would go out. We were right at the edge of the wilderness, and they'd go out and they'd be gone for a weekend and come back, and they would have gotten a big, huge, I thought it was a black bear, but I guess now in this day and age, it was probably a grizzly bear considering the size of it. I mean, it would fill up a whole flatbed trailer. They were enormous. And we rode snowmobiles. That was our way we would get around with snowmobiles. If it turned 60 degrees, all the kids had shorts on and we were out running around, playing. And so it was an interesting, cool life. I liked it. The smell of wild garlic brings me back to my childhood. There you go, Martin. Exactly. Same kind of thing. What is Boyce trying to protect? Well, I don't know. That's the question I have, Blonde. And I've been reading a lot. I've been trying to educate myself on this second anointing. And what that has kind of opened up is this awareness that the LDS Church is incredibly powerful, and they have a magical power of making things disappear off the internet. We did see a bit of that, didn't we? As soon as Lori and them were arrested, suddenly all of these, like preparing a people, all that came down. They basically just cleaned the internet of anything related to Chad and Lori. And on the one hand, they want us to believe that Chad is excommunicated, he's kicked out of the church. And on the other hand, he writes a document that directly shows that he knew exactly what the second anointing was and how to do the ceremony. Well, if he's kicked out, if he is not a trusted elder of the church, then how the hell did he find out about the second anointing? And especially, why is he and Lori and Jason Mao, why are they in the temple being sealed? Yeah, inquiring minds want to know. So Lori and Chad were friends with elders of the church that were not excommunicated. So why are they spending weekends together if they're such bad people? They got to be kicked out of the church. It's a strange story. Yeah, it was, Kim. We had a wonderful time. Yeah. Yeah, Oklahoma says skunks are really cool critters. They're very friendly. And if you have their scent gland removed, then it's very much like having a very cool cat, right? They're interesting. Same thing with raccoons. If you ever get lucky enough to get like a baby raccoon before their eyes are open, you can't get them when they're a little older, but before their eyes are open, when they're very small, you have to bottle feed. They can become pets until when they begin to reach adolescence, they can get dangerous to your cats and dogs or small children. But they're very interesting. They wash their food, which is cute because it looks like their little hands are like little human hands. And they take the dog food and they put it in the water bowl and they clean it and wash it and everything. But they're really not cleaning it. It's just because they don't make saliva. And so they have to wet their food before they can eat it. The Mormon Church preys on the people that are prone to magical thinking. Well, and don't forget, Joseph Smith was the original magic thinker. I mean, some of the stuff he was doing was dabbling in the occult. He was also a criminal, a fraud. There's arrest documentation. he was arrested, and he was committing fraud by telling people that he had special powers. His dad was telling people he had special powers and that he could find buried treasure, and he would take a rock and he would put it into a hat, and he would put his face down into the hat so that no light could get in, and then he would look deep into the rock, and the rock would tell him, where the treasure was or whatnot. And that's supposedly how he found the gold plates. But before that, even, he was using this rock to just look for gold in the ground or silver in the ground. And people were hiring him, paying a lot of money to come and tell him, hey, where's the buried treasure, on my property. And then he would say something like, okay, well, here's how I'm going to look for the treasure. Where's my money? He'd get his money up front. And then, or his dad would collect the money, get it up front. And then he'd say, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this ritual, and I'm going to pray, and blah, blah, blah. And you need to, I don't know, sacrifice a chicken, or you need to say a prayer, or you need, that he would give them some task to do as he then starts looking for the silver or the gold or whatever he's looking for. And then all of a sudden, then he would stop and he would say, oh, I can see that the spirits have taken the gold back, and it's back in heaven, and it's hidden now because you're not a true believer. You let your doubts enter, and now you're being punished by God taking the gold back. So I didn't find it. My rock in the hat, I didn't locate it, but it's your fault because you didn't have faith, or you didn't, cut the chicken's head off the right way, or, well, not really cut it, but you know what I mean. So yeah, he was the original one to do that, Diane. Yeah. Leoza, welcome. I had a Pabst Blue Ribbon beer mug, Joseph Smith picture on it from 18 something. I sent it to auction and got 10 lousy bucks. I'm so sorry, Cinnamon. I would have thought it'd been worth millions, my dear. If it had a white salamander on it, it might would have been worth more. Leoza, is that law enforcement officer? Leoza, welcome. I wonder if Joseph Smith would roll in his grave if he knew that L. Ron Hubbard dubbed him by completely mirror imaging his religion based upon evil. I didn't know that there was that parallel Martian planet. So Scientology bears a close resemblance to the Mormon religion. Interesting. What'd you say, Piddling Bill? Oh, yeah. Okay. So Piddling Bill cleared it up. He's like this encyclopedia of information. He just has all this useless information in his head, but it's like the answer to any trivia question imaginable. He says that the Scientology, that's kind of like Mormonism for rich people. I can own that. I think he's right about that. Cinnamon says, exactly. Okay. Joseph Smith and his father bought the something. People like that remind me of certain type of tribal folk, not American Indians, though the other kind. I don't know what that means. Oh, look, Crush is here. Hey, Difficult Research, welcome. Just wanted to thank you for diving into the bottom. It is a bottomless pit. And listen, Crusha, you wouldn't believe the nasty comments that I'm getting. Yeah. You know what that is. You know who that is. Just wanted to thank you for diving into bottomless rabbit hole to research second anointing. At this point, one would have to convince me that I'm wrong about it happening. I think you're 100% right. The parallels are there. When you hear the story of Jason Mao meeting them in the temple, no, I'm with you. This was not a lone nut theory. This was not old Chadster, being, goofy and socially clumsy, and Lori, the seductress, coming in, and all by themselves, they put all this together and affect all these lives. I mean, how many people divorced their families and remarried within a couple of weeks? Crazy. It's crazy. No, this is bigger. It was fueled by some sort of organized theory of mind. There was a shared goal in this group of people. And you start looking at the podcasts that they basically cleaned off the internet in a dramatic fashion. But you start looking at the podcasts, the preparing of people. I went back through and looked at Melanie Gibb, her interviews with Nate Eaton, and the testimony, the recorded phone calls to her gossipy friend. That girl knows a lot more than what she is saying. I am convinced that. And I feel a little bit strange with the whole David Warwick thing. I think he had a tremendous fall from grace, all to be a part of this, well, what I call Lori, the queen of the damned. So he had a tremendous fall from grace to apparently be involved with the Chadster and the Queen of the Dam. So it's interesting. It goes so deep, it'll make your head spin. We would need an exorcist. Exactly. Yeah. And it is, when you think about the handling of Lori, from the multiple hospitalizations, how long they went with letting her gallivant around the globe with nobody knowing where those children were. It's so odd that she just keeps seeming to get away with it. Like, it's just, she gets her way. She decides she doesn't want cameras in the courtroom, and what happens? Boom, suddenly no cameras in the courtroom, thanks to Judge Boyce. And this death penalty thing was, no one was even watching because they thought that it was so unlikely. It's terrible. I think there's someone that likes Lori. This means Lori's not crazy. The language she used on my uncle is the language in the second anointing, which is the induction into the Church of the Firstborn. The language she used on Charles. What exactly, or which part are you talking about? What did she say to Charles that church does not want their involvement to be known? That's why I think this whole thing about, oh, well, Chad's been excommunicated. The law office next to the Mormon temple in Salt Lake City is very powerful. I know. I've got that in my head, Cinnamon. I know what you're talking about. They've already violated her right to a speedy trial. Right there, Blonde, right? It's terrifying to think about the implications. Even a guilty verdict won't stand. That she is a god, a member of the 144. Yeah, the Church of the Firstborn that's the whole membership into the 144, right? So the police in Utah are solely there to protect the church. Well, that was one of the first things that I thought was so outrageous, is that you have these two kids. Well, you got some shady characters too. Julie Rowe was commenting often about JJ and Tylee when they were missing, during this period of time that they were missing. And you could tell Julie Rowe was enamored of Chad, but she was talking and saying, oh, there's no way Chad would hurt anybody. And You had Lori's family saying, I know Lori. She wouldn't hurt, her kids. It to me, it was before we ever found out about Melanie Gibb, them saying that she had JJ and whatnot. It seemed so odd to me as it was, and to everybody, that as it was playing out, you just kept thinking, but why are you letting her walk around free? Like, where are the kids? And I remember one time saying to my husband, maybe the kids are in Hawaii. Maybe they're following Chad and Lori and they see the kids. So they're not, they don't feel pressured to do anything. But that wasn't the case at all. Not the case at all. This is so much bigger. Tylee's body. Think about it on a grander scale and then let that sink in. It's parallel. It is terrifying. I know what you're talking about. And I've tried so many times to think about a way to talk about what you're referring to with Tylee. I can't figure out how to have that conversation in a way that people would be willing to listen. And yet it happened, right? You guys know more than anybody, it happened because they recovered her body. So it's just, it is very, and I'll tell you something else I don't understand. I don't understand how Chad's children, after learning about the condition of the children, even Tylee, JJ, it looked like to me it was quite intentional, almost like there was deference shown to him in a strange way, mimicking some historical stuff, if you know what I'm talking about. How did they convince themselves that their dad had nothing to do with it when it's right there, and the extent of violence that Tylee experienced? How can they even open their mind? Their mother, how can they even open their mind to it? It's terrible. I knew with her behavior, first court appearance, how it didn't match the severity of the situation. Yeah, it was a huge, and smug, right? I don't see crazy. I see smug. I see a woman who thinks that she is smarter than everyone else in the room. Yeah. So I'm still trying to, educate myself, but you're right. It's so complicated. When I got into the information about Joseph Smith historically and what his life was like before the church and whatnot, I just shook my head and I thought, how do these people believe that? Well, anyway, it's very uncomfortable. We have to get comfortable talking about uncomfortable things, because to look the other way is to silence another victim. Yeah. So if this is a culture of acceptance, I'm talking about for what happened with the kids, with JJ and Tylee and Tammy and Charles. If this is part of that secret culture among the elders, the more important, influential of the group, then how long can it go on? I mean, how many others have there been? This guy that's on the screen right now, this is James Toliver Craig. He is a dentist out of Aurora, Colorado, and he's just been arrested for killing his wife. He too is Mormon. And when you read there's a little bit of what the affair partner has put out, and you see the history with him, and you think, gosh, in some ways it's it feels very similar to what Chad and Lori were doing, that it was like they're entitled and the other people have no choice in what happens to them. It's terrible. It's very frightening, Kresha. But is her behavior bizarre, knowing her leaders anointed she and Chad and guaranteed their salvation? It No, it's not bizarre. She's smug. Like, I have a secret and nobody knows but me. That's what she looks like when that first court appearance. Um, Something else that happened that first court appearance there in Hawaii, when they announced her bail, she mouthed the words. I don't remember if it was 1,000,000 or 3,000,000. I can't remember what they said, but she mouthed the words and almost smiled, like somehow the size of the bail was indication that, a judgment on her quality as a human being. It was very strange. She's a strange woman. Curtin and McConkie is the name of the law firm beside the temple. She is playing the court and the lawyers like a fiddle. I said that, big ups. The little hairdo that she's got going on and the way she kind of prances when she comes in. And I'm really embarrassed for Judge Boyce that he fell for that hook, line, and sinker. It's an obscenity. It really is. He needs to go back and read what happened, the condition of JJ and Tylee's bodies when they were found, as he starts thinking, oh, she's so cute, she's so sweet, she's just misunderstood. Yeah, Judge Boyce, go back and read. Look, remind yourself of what that monster did. If you saw my dad on Banfield the other night, it's because they're finally understanding the research that I've done for 4 years now, and they are highly concerned. I didn't see it, Kesha. I'll go look though. It is heartbreaking here. I've made this plea a couple of times on my channel about the cameras, right? And I don't know why the prosecution didn't fight for the cameras. I don't understand why. It seems like the prosecution is letting this happen. And are they letting it happen because they're incompetent, or they're letting it happen because it's part of a grand plan? I don't know. But you think about Charles Vallow from Louisiana, working in Houston, knowing tons of people in this area. Same thing with Brandon and Colby. Lots of friends and family in Texas and in Louisiana, Arizona. And how are all these people supposed to be able to go and see this trial as victims of Lori Vallow? As the family members of JJ and of Tylee are victims. They have rights. And this judge is like, well, if you want to watch the testimony, you've got to come and try to get into the courtroom. And if you can't get in the courtroom, then we'll put you over in another building or another, room to watch a television. But that doesn't take away from the fact, Kesha, that you're talking about an 8 to 10 week trial. Where are you guys going to live? How much money is it going to cost you to have a B&B or hotel room, or even just to pay for a camping spot? What about being away from your jobs for 6 to 8 weeks? The food problem, if you don't rent a place where you can cook. I mean, this is a huge financial burden that should not be placed on victims. And I am not an attorney. I'm a psychologist. I don't have any law enforcement, background. If I can make the argument, why didn't Ron Wood, why didn't Lindsay Blake stand up and explain that there were victims from across the country that were entitled to be a part of that trial and to hear the evidence and see the evidence and explain, financially and time-wise, it's not doable. And it is the smallest courtroom. Yes. It is. We saw the same thing with Barrymore Few. Yeah, exactly, Martin. Like Fremont County, we saw the same thing with Barry Morphew. They had enough room. They prioritized journalists. They gave, like, if I remember, maybe 12 spots to journalists and then family. And essentially it left 10 seats for the general public. So same tactics are being used. This seems like something out of Iris Eaton's playbook, what they're doing with Lori Vallow. And I find it obscene. Oh, fun, Big Ups. You're kind of messing around with some wild and crazy women, aren't you? My flight is one way and $200, room and board and transportation. Tammy's family asked boys to allow a link to watch because of hardships, and boys said no. My God. I'm telling you, I'm sick of that man. Wow. I don't know much about where Tammy's family is from. Are they in Idaho or Utah, or where are they from? I've seen a couple of interviews, like I think it's no, it must be her sister-in-law. Yeah, so during the Travis Alexander trial, Crusha, um, his family, they did not miss a single day of the whole thing, and it was another one of these, like, 10 weeks long. But everybody took up a collection to get money to help them pay for their I think they rented a house. Their aunt came with them. The aunt was cooking and cleaning for them so that they could make it to trial every day. And a lot of them lost their jobs because of this. So in this day and age, this should not be happening. You guys should have been, did they give y'all a victim's advocate? Yeah, I think Arizona is still looking good for a conviction if what they're doing in Idaho, if it continues. Big Ups, you need to write a book. My dad said he does not consider Boyce a judge and will not refer to him as a judge, as he cried out for the Supreme Court justice to intervene. Good for him. He asked if the church was pulling strings. So many people feel so uncomfortable with, there's a lot of people that are, Scott Reich is a criminal defense attorney in Colorado, and he has spoken out saying that it is very strange how Boyce is constantly, how many conversations they had off the record or in judges' chambers without a court reporter. It's very uncomfortable. It's so sad. I'm gonna where was adamant in his feelings about the judge. Arizona is even more corrupt from my research and is in the Mormon. I started on halfway through it. Well, I think Mormon is as good a word as anything, right? So Travis Alexander was Mormon, and he was in Arizona when his murder happened. Yep. So it does seem like there's a strange connection between Arizona and Utah, Idaho. They live in Springville, Idaho, Kim. I researched Mormonism extensively because I knew they weren't that smart. Lori was told all those crazy things. She isn't that smart. I think she has a personality disorder. I think she has delusions, that whole narcissism thing where she believes she was destined for something special, which kind of laid the the path to Chad Daybell manipulating her with this nonsense. Just remember, you never really know someone. I don't have, I'd like to invite you to come up on panel, Kresha. But I'm not in a location right now that I could do that. Maybe we could, maybe would you like to maybe come up on panel and kind of educate us and teach us a little bit about what you've learned? Maybe we could do it like Sunday night. Dating is not like it used to be. It's all about the money. I'm just glad that you and others are seeing this. I have been super careful and I've kept my circle small because 3 of my family members, my mom was on their hit list. Oh my God. It is unnerving. So here's something I heard in Houston. I remember where I was sitting when I listened to it. I was in a parking lot and I pulled over to stop to listen. Was a lady that worked with I believe she worked with Charles and Brandon. Did they worked for the same company, right? Brandon Boudreaux. And this lady was doing an interview on one of our local. I'm from Galveston, so but this woman was on like a morning talk show in the Houston area, and they were asking her about the, JJ and Tylee and everything that had taken place. And she said that that they were like what you've just described, that they were, after the shots at Brandon and what happened to Charles, that while they were looking for the children, that they were all in hiding. The people that worked for that company, that they were getting death threats. So these people were scary. This was bigger than Chad and Lori. I agree with you. This was more than what old Chad and Lori could come up with. This was more. Hey, I'm staying here. I haven't decided. I know I don't feel good. I'm sorry. Well, I'll take that if we're not, because it's already. Okay. Okay, so probably not. Okay. Well, I'm still live, and I don't have a way to turn this off. Are we having quail? Oh, nice. Okay. Sorry. You should see the looks I get when I pull up in a 98 Ford pickups. Well, so I'm actually from Louisiana, Cressa. We can talk later about, but yes, I'm from Louisiana, and then my husband wanted to spend the rest of his life fishing, and so that's why we're down here, is be by the ocean and do some fishing. The police around Colorado City are spooky in Arizona. There is not a cult. Well, there is, but it's the bigger one. Mormon Mafia was coined before I came along. Well, look. Okay, so I know that there's all this the preparing of people. So the preparing of people, that was like the whole prepper group, is that Melanie Gibb was a part of, is that right? Team Doocy Doo Doo 222, Louisiana as well. Yeah. It's funny, we're a really small state. You don't really count as being from Louisiana unless you're south of Alexandria, right? So if you're north of Alexandria, then you have to, you're more like coming from Arkansas. But I was in, where was I? Oh, I think I was in Schiphol, Amsterdam airport. And I'd been traveling 24 hours. I was wiped out coming from Egypt. And so I was sitting there, and I had this long layover, like an 8-hour layover. And I was sitting there, and just kind of, watching the people and whatnot. And I could hear these men back behind me that were talking. And I kept thinking they sounded familiar, and I thought, no, it's not anybody I know, and kept talking. Then finally, one of them says, fried, what did he say? Fried mashed potato balls. I don't even know how you'd start to fry a mashed potato ball. And as soon as he said that, it clicked in my head, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I got to know those people. There was something in their sound, in their voices. I turned around and I looked, and I said, excuse me, I don't know you, but are you from North Louisiana? And they kind of looked and they said, yeah. And they said, we're from Plain Dealing Academy. And then all of a sudden they said who I was. And I was like, oh my God. So I didn't know them, but we had played them like in high school football and whatnot. So it's funny that you come from such a small place, but we all sound alike, and like say Lake Charles, one of my very, very best friends from college was from Lake Charles. And so it's funny when I listen to Larry and Kay talk, I can hear it, and it feels like, oh, we're neighbors. That's my home. Oh, that is crazy, Krisha. What is PAP? PAP? I don't know what that is. Mormons are taught from a young age everyone's a possible convert, and that is their service to convert. Oh, very nice, Kim. This is how they practice modern day polygamy. That's something else about this whole thing, this whole preparing of people and the prepper camps that they would practice on the weekends. And, some people had talked and said there was a lot going on at those camps. It was strange. Everybody was having affairs with everybody else, Anything north of I-10 is a Yankee. Their gumbo tastes different, or so I'm told. You would be exactly correct. Our gumbo is not quite as spicy as what you're getting down on the coast, for sure. Yeah. So, have you? So I guess let me ask you this question: as you're doing all this research, you've been doing this for 4 years, right? Have you saved like the recordings that? There were recordings that were up, they've come down now. How much of that have you been able to memorialize and like put on an external hard drive or something? I recommend the books God Makers. My parents had us read it 25 years ago. It's an MLM, and they use Jason Mao and the like to recruit. My God. Oh, God. Boy, that is a shady actor. Too bad venue can't be changed to South Carolina. It's all about the roux. Yeah. Hi, Elio. Having internet issues. The joy of living in Africa. Oh, very nice. Where are you living in Africa? I mean, I hate to, intrude. What is it with LDS and MLMs? I believe this whole MLM analogy for the South Africa is beautiful. Yeah. Gotta be, some areas are dangerous though, right? Um, Jackie Hughes, welcome, my friend. Good to see you. Yeah, South Carolina would be a great place to put Lori Vallow on trial. Absolutely. It's the truth, though. So, how does one prove such atrocities? The First Amendment thing is a bitch, if you know what I mean. Yeah, not. Um, it's not. Here's the problem with it, Kresha. It's not just being finding a venue to present your information and show people that what you're saying is accurate, that it's not some kind of crazy harebrained scheme. The problem is this: they've been able to get into the Mormon church, and the church also has secrets, right? And so it's like you're not just going after proving this small group. They're not even a small group; they're a pretty large group. But it's not just about proving the atrocities that Tylee experienced, right? It was you don't just prove that as something drove this behavior. Some belief system made it possible that a group of people were willing to do this to two children. They're protected by this so-called shared religion. Have you ever seen anything so ridiculous as Julie Rowe, who's she's just silly. It's her character is silly. It's not even scary, and yet no one does anything to shut down all the fraud that she's engaged in. She's got connections to so many of these people. So it's not just the group that made this happen, that manipulated Chad and Lori and provided them this framework where they felt like they could operate with impunity. It's that bigger insulation of it all happening underneath the Mormon umbrella. And I think that's where Judge Boyce and John Pryor, that's where they come in, is they're there as part of protecting the greater Mormon lifestyle, LDS Church. We can't have anybody questioning us. But then you've got these other people that built up Lori and Chad, so essentially, and they're benefiting from the power of the Mormon Church, I think. And so I think that's where the trouble is. And what was so crazy, listen, this is what was so crazy too for me as an outsider. Charles Vallow is on video. He's pleading for help. He's saying, I need some help. My wife has gone right off the deep end. He's really logical. He's really calm. I mean, I'm going to ask all of you guys. If you go home, you've been off on a business trip. You come home, your truck is not at the airport where you left it. And when you finally do get a ride to your house, you've been locked out of your house. And when you finally get into your house, there's nothing there. You don't know where your children are. You don't know where your things are. Nothing. Would you be as calm as Charles Vallow was on that police body camera? I'm going to tell you right now, I would have been losing my, what? I would have been demanding that someone hunt my spouse down and put them in jail. No, even in all of that, he's saying, I need to get her some help. She needs a doctor. She needs to go in the hospital. Something's wrong. And yet the cops acted like he was hysterical. They acted like he was somehow in the wrong. It was if you're a rational, logical person, it's shocking to watch the body camera where they're talking to Charles. And then you compare that to Lori and Tylee and Melanie in the police station. And they basically coach her on how not to get picked up for a psych eval. It's crazy. Crazy. No, I wouldn't be calm either. I would be very upset. That's right. That's right. When he was explaining, well, she thinks she's Moroni, and they were looking at him like, what's wrong with you, man? You're making up stories about that woman. It was pretty horrible to watch. I can't even imagine how y'all, all I've got to say is you guys are very strong people. I think this is why the church uses language like seeing Christ face to face, because nobody will believe anyone talking this crap. And look, we all bought into it. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I will. You have a standing invitation anytime you want to come up on panel and teach us, what you've learned. I mean, I'm trying to learn, but I know you've probably looked at everything that is out there. But you're always welcome if you want to come up. Okay. That madness I went off. Epiphany is a powerful energy. It makes Mormons absolutely crazy. Don't say you like the book under the banner of it. What? I know one thing that makes Mormons crazy. Don't say you like the book under the banner of heaven. Okay, so the name of the book is Under the Banner of Heaven. You do it, Kresha. Absolutely. I can't understand why law enforcement didn't take him seriously. It was the most bizarre thing. I don't understand it. And, I think it just goes to show the power of the LDS influence in these communities. Oh, that would be so great, Kresha. So I could do it this Sunday. We could do it early evening, or whatever time you want to. It's good for me. You let me know your time, and I'll make it happen. Someone above having code name James. What do you mean? I don't understand, Shalmar. Let me look. Every offshoot are people who have taken part in the second anointing. Doesn't that make sense to y'all? Oh, yeah, almost all LDS, Leo. Almost all LDS. And they all center around Arizona, Idaho, and Utah. Oh, so 6 p.m. Yours is okay. So let me get your link to post it so everybody can find you. Hold on just 1 minute. So Kresha's she does a live stream every Sunday at 6:00. Difficult research. I got to ask you a question, Kresha. You've been doing this research for 4 years. And I know that when people get deep into these topics and they, start amassing all of this information, sometimes other people can look at you like you're crazy. Like, that what you're saying is exactly correct, but other people that don't have access to the information that you've been just inundated with, they look at you and they're like, oh, that's so silly. Don't be ridiculous. And so at this point, Kresha, is it fine? Is it a relief that now people are starting to believe what you've been saying? So mods, will y'all just kind of keep putting her link up there for her Sunday live stream? There it is. Yes, that's what I imagine. I think it's probably a relief that now people are beginning to listen instead of just kind of like, yeah, Krisha, we know, yeah. When it finally begins to kind of come out, it's a relief. Yeah, absolutely. It's called Difficult Research. Difficult, and I think I've got that wrong. It's spelled like this: DIFFICULTRESEARC. So that's the name of her channel. Big ups is Difficult Research. Charles Vallow is her uncle. JJ is her nephew. Oh, thank you, Nana. Thank you. Yeah, I hope you guys will go over there and subscribe to Krisha's channel. There are others who need to be held accountable for the murders of my nephew, JJ, Tylee, my cousin, and Charles, my uncle. Absolutely. And Tammy Daybell was also a part of this. And in some ways, I think that Lori had something to do with Joseph Ryan's death. I know that's not really included with the other family members, but it just seemed like that was, Charles was dead within about a year of Joseph dying. So the question is, whatever chemical, whatever poison she may have been using, was that a test? Is that what, she crawled into the window at Joe Ryan's apartment and Krisha. Oops, my A didn't go on there. Yes. S-H-A. Krisha, big ups. Pay attention, Krisha, big ups. So I hope you guys will go over and subscribe to her channel so you'll get notifications. And then she goes live and does a live stream on Sunday at 6 p.m. That's Louisiana time, which would be 5 Eastern. I advocate for all 5 of them. I cannot separate them. No, I absolutely. Yeah. It's so hard to let me ask you this. How soon after Melanie Boudreaux got divorced, she met Ian Pulowski? How soon were they married? Like within 2 weeks of being a meeting, or a week? How long did it take them to get married? Do you remember? I think Joe was murdered when my uncle came to Lake Charles because my grandmother died. Oh my God. Wow. Ian and Natalie divorced in July, and literally like a week or so later. Crazy. See, how can you, and then you look at what happened with Alex and oh Lord, I've drawn a blank on her name. Zulema. Same thing with them, just married out of nowhere. How does anybody look at the totality of these people and not recognize that there was something very unusual that was happening? That was all arranged. I believe it in my heart. Her description of Ampy. Well, so Natalie was pretty freaked out by Melanie, right? When she started hearing what was happening. God, I wouldn't want my children around. Ugh. Everything has come from the church. I think Melanie Gibb, I think that's how she ended up with David Warwick. I think it was part of this group that, well, it's the 144,000, isn't it? That they have these arranged marriages. They're all special. They're all going to be, I agree. No big ups. We're talking about Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell and the Church of the Firstborn, and she was freaked out because Melanie Pulowski's teeth were too straight and her eyelashes were too strong. 2x2. Yeah, well, she's very cool under pressure, isn't she? Lori too. Seeing her in that the police video after, where I guess she and Tylee are being interviewed related to the death of Charles. Just so above it all, just cool, collected, just chilling. The belief system was created from the criminal minded. It traps magical thinkers and attracts more criminal minded to leadership. I was raised Catholic, but I really don't subscribe to organized religion, especially after all this. When you see what power can do, it's very frightening to see it consolidated in a small area. Absolutely. I agree. I'm so glad that you and Martian Planet Art are friends. That's awesome. Not necessarily criminal per se, but smarter than the average bear. Oh, it's terrifying. They get instant credibility because they're, church leaders. And there's no, you have to be able to pass a background check to get a job, right? But Joseph Smith, he was arrested, fraud, engaging in other things, and they've turned that man into, the second coming of Christ, I guess. Gave up on Lutheran religion. So anyway, well, Crush, it was so good to talk with you today. I'm really glad that you came in, and yeah, I am ready to see this woman, be held accountable, but Judge Boyce is scaring me. And this prosecution, or should we say lack thereof, they should be embarrassed about all that has taken place. They should be embarrassed. You did not you did not hijack the stream. Absolutely not. No, I'm glad you came in and talked with us. Yes. I'm doing more. I'm still doing the research and everything on it. Trying to get some videos together of old recordings where people were talking about it. But I'm very uncomfortable with the religious influence, the patriarchal power that's put in the hands of these men, and the women are kind of relegated to this position of they're the men kind of objectify the women and turn them into property. And so when the woman is somehow no longer what the man wants, then they just feel like they can just get rid of them and replace them with another person. Again, like they're an object. You look at Melanie Pulowski and Ian, that they were married within weeks, like a week or a week and a half of meeting, not dating, meeting. When you look at that from Ian Pulowski's point of view, what was he shopping? Like, was this his idea of shopping and finding, his favorite milk brand, or what kind of candy he preferred, that he just decides, well, I'll just get rid of one wife and replace it with another. Oh, I like her. I'll take her. And then a week later, they're married. It's so strange. And we saw that pattern repeated many times. I am firmly believing that Melanie Gibb and David Warwick were an arranged partnership. I think Zulema Pastenis and Alex were an arranged partnership. Um, I I think you have to be fairly short-sighted not to see these patterns that happen. Not just it started. We first learned about them with Lori and Chad, but as you kind of spread out into the bigger, immediate community that they were in of these believers, they were all doing this strange divorce and pairing up and not knowing the person they're married. I still believe that this idea of the 144,000, according to Chad and Lori, that it was going to be primarily that they were envisioning a more matriarchal type of society, because all of the men that were involved were men that were, well, soy boys, right? Really weak in ego strength. And they were with these alpha females. It can't be a wrong idea. Melanie Gibb was referred to as point person in Arizona. You have to look at the larger picture and it will blow you away. Moms of Truth is another cult within Mormonism. I had not heard of that one, Diane. I said that I still think when they said the Lord, as in referred to the Lord, is not the Lord, but a secondary name like James, the just. They teach Heavenly Mother in the Church of the Firstborn. See, I hadn't heard that. There you go. There you go. So the female is given a position of power in the Church of the Firstborn. It's amazing. Joseph and Brigham were brothers. John Pryor, historically, John Pryor, not the attorney for Chad, but John Pryor as a church member, as Joseph Smith is coming into the fold, gaining power. He was very powerful in protecting Joseph Smith. I thought that was an interesting parallel with, Chad's attorney is also John Pryor, who served some very interesting time for his behavior, quite misogynistic and violent. The coded names, I do believe, go into the actual ritual murder aspect. Big ups. You are being a distraction. He's giving all of the marriages now. This is why he got rid of Mark Means, because he was calling church out. Exactly. I know. See, my conspiracy mind. That's what I said to my husband. I said the reason Mark Means has to go is because he was not playing ball with the church. And now I'm embarrassed because maybe that's exactly what did happen. Yeah, Mark Means was questioning the church and why they had access to his client. Yep. to the point where they dismissed the initial charges to push him out because of McConkie. So McConkie was involved? Like they legally had some documents in this whole thing? So you think Chad and Lori were at the buy-in level? Yeah, but they brought people on board, right? They didn't have many under them. They had Zulema, Melanie Gibb. Well, Melanie Gibb, though, was associated with Jason Mao before Chad came in, right? My next deep dive. Oh my gosh. LDS helpline. Holy shit. Okay. All right. Let me write that down so I don't forget. Let's see if I can find me a pen. Okay. There we go. All right. Hashtag LDS helpline. All right. I'm definitely going to do that, Krisha. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know. Bill's always making jokes about his magic underwear.
I'd like to try some magic underwear. That sounds pretty good.
It's a bit silly, isn't it? It really is silly.
What do they do for you?
It's so much violence and so much subjugation and misogyny, and yet they come up with foolishness like, peeking behind the veil. Really? Why? Chad is able to see things that nobody else can see because he, jumped into some water one day. It's just silly.
The magic underwear make you see the future?
I don't think it was the magic underwear I don't remember I don't know what the magic underwear does. I don't know, maybe a porcelain portal. Yeah. So it's a nightmare. There's no doubt. But it's so ridiculous that healthy people can see how absurd it is, and yet so many people buy in, and it's resulted in an environment where a nightmare happened, an outright nightmare. It's an obscenity all done in the name of the Lord. It's an obscenity. Who represented what's the VIC? I know it, Boy Scouts of America. He has gone up against the church 190 times. My God. Yeah, I laughed when I saw the part that said, if you undergo this, second anointing, that there's only two ways that you can lose your salvation. And one is, if you blaspheme, the Lord, and the other is if you spill innocent blood. And then I'm throwing my hands in the air and I'm going, what do you mean if you're spilling innocent blood? If you're the priest or the priestess or the king or the queen, you're the one who's passing judgment on whether somebody is innocent or not. So if there's somebody you want to get rid of, all you got to do is just name them, that they're guilty of something like being a zombie, and then you can do it, and you won't be held to account. It's a recipe for disaster. Oh, the SA victims. Okay. Wow. It is, and the church themselves, I think they know that it's out there, that people are learning and they're open their eyes up. But even them, their response is not to change the culture in the LDS church, but just to erase the stuff off the internet. Like that's going to help. Yeah, it's just like the Vatican. Yeah. Oh, yay. Yeah, it's just they've been able to well, I rather like that analogy to the MLM because I think about the amount of money. So I believe Kresha can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I believe that Charles ended up finding his things in the house behind all of her prepper food, right? That there were boxes and boxes of prepper food, and that behind that is where Lori had hidden Charles' clothes and whatnot. I think I remember that. So Rob Wood was a bishop? No. No. So really what Rob Wood's job is to keep any conversation about Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell away from any kind of connection to the LDS church. That's what the whole, and that is absolutely John Pryor's goal, because you could see the objections and the things that he said during the preliminary hearing that he was trying to insulate it. Yeah, absolutely, Krusha. Absolutely. Look at these damn books, Kresha. Have you read any of Chad Daybell's books? It's the worst fourth grade student writing it. Okay. It's the most awful to try to read one of his books. I'd I'd rather put bamboo splinters under my fingernails. It's horrible. His writing is horrible. The imagery is not there. It's boring. It's terrible. It's a terrible experience. Um, and yet he's selling, but also he just sits down, he writes out what amounts to 300 pages of a never-ending paragraph with no kind of form or organization, and then put some artwork on the front of it, and then people lap it up and buy it like it's hotcakes. And you think, why are you selling more books than some actual really great writers, that have their books out on Amazon? And it is 100% about that connection between the church and the belief that somehow he has special powers, because he's unprincipled enough to lie and say, oh, I can see behind the veil. Well, most people don't say that because they have morals and ethics, but he's willing to say it because he's a goober gourd. Zero social skills, zero charisma. And so all you got to do is just put words on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be worthwhile. And the people that believe this, that are groomed to, do these call outs and spend tens of thousands of dollars on this nasty MRE food that they'll never use, that all of this gets donated to their organization. It's just a cash cow. It's just a cash cow. And the people at the bottom believe, oh, we're going to be saved. Physically, we're going to be saved. And we're also going to be saved by being, welcomed into heaven as part of the 144,000. But in reality, the people at the top, the Jason Mows of the world, they're just raking that cash in. They're raking it in. They're doing very little, writing silly books, and then, dressing up like a Roman warrior. That was so embarrassing, Jason. I was so embarrassed for you when you did that. But they're, people are buying them. Narcissism is produced by the church, not everyone, because there's always the empath. They only buy from other Mormons. That's right. All men are taught this in church. A 12-year-old is a deacon and therefore has more say so than the mother or the grandmother. Ugh. It's unbelievable. What is Hiplos, Shalimar? I got a bad feeling about him. I think he was there that night, Kresha. I think he was there that night that Lori took the truck and locked Charles out of the house. Did y'all think that? I do too, Shalimar. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a big one and it's working. Looks like we slowed down our connection. All right. Okay, people. Hiplos, to turn loose, and guess who went on a mission to Cebu, Philippines? Mike Stroud. Guess who was there when he was there at the same time? Second dude in charge. Wow. And Mike Stroud is close with Mal, right? Well, I think that Chad took writings that were part of religious scholars' accepted work, and he just sort of renamed it into what he wanted it to be. I think the same, Diane. Remember Hiplos. It was the ultimate freedom. He was Mao's seminary teacher. Wow. Did Julie Rowe ever meet any of these people? Well, I mean, I know Chad and everything, but she never met Lori. But did she know Jason Mao or Mike Stroud? Oh God. Wow. It's very scary. Very scary. And how many, just like you said, how many others are out there? I mean, we know about Chad and Lori because of the nightmare they wrought, but how many others are out there that just didn't get to this level of insanity yet, right? Suzanne Freeman. Yep, 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 yep. I know who that is. Huh. Mormon is the second wealthiest church in the world underneath the Greek Orthodox. It's a machine. Well, so I know a little bit about the Greek Orthodox Church. It's about as misogynistic as it could get. They don't even allow the women to walk down the center aisle of the church. The women have to go, they enter in and then they go along the back walls and they enter the pews from the side. Only the men are allowed to enter the church going down the center aisle. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chris. But it's so interesting. I'm really grateful to you for the, additional information. It helps guide me in what I'm looking for and what I think I need to spend time reading. So I appreciate that. But we'll come up with a time to try to get together and let you teach us. Would be honored to explain to you and your community. My Uncle Charles said Lori was nonsensical, and that is what this is. Yeah, absolutely. And it was so nonsensical, and yet how many people were pretending that it was perfectly reasonable. And in some ways, Kresha, I think that the detectives also treated it like it was reasonable. I sit and I watch the interviews that they had with Melanie Gibb and Zulema, and I just think to myself, why are y'all talking to these two women like they're making sense? Why aren't you holding their feet to the fire and getting some information? But they didn't. They were very careful. I'm glad you love the research. Yeah, I love to research. It is like the land of Oz. But you know what? If it is the land of Oz, then there's got to be a curtain somewhere with a little inefficient, ineffective man behind it, right? It'd be really great to be able to reveal who the guy is behind the curtain. Yep, it'd be really great. All right, Kresha. Well, I'll get in touch with you and we'll come up with a day for you to talk and teach us, what we need to know before this thing kicks off with Lori. And I am just so grateful that you came and chatted with us. And everybody remembered Sunday, 6:00, and she'll be on her weekly talk show. Okay. All right. All right, everybody. So this was a great conversation today. I am so grateful that it turned out so interesting. Remember the beginning of this video, we're talking about the Mormon dentist in Colorado who has just been arrested for the murder of his wife, Angela Craig. And he supposedly, if he threw in the towel, he was looking for a hard reset and wanted to run away with his love of his life, Dr. Karen. All right. Y'all have a wonderful weekend. It is Friday. And if you're anything like me, it's time to rest. I'm going to see you guys later. All right. I'll probably see you tomorrow. Okay. Y'all have a great Friday night. Bye. Romney is. He may be the man behind the curtain, right? What are we eating tonight? Well, maybe